Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Yes, I'm back, and what better way than to start my 2025 fantasy football season than with some running back rankings. So that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about, my top 36 running back rankings for our upcoming 2025 fantasy football drafts. Now, before I get into talking about all of these players, a couple reminders. First and foremost, for those of you who are looking for my thoughts on an individual running back, you can find timestamps in the description of the video. Also, do not forget that rankings are subject to change. Between now and week 1 of the season, a lot of these rankings are going to change. So in order to stay up to date on my latest rankings and videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and get us one step closer to achieving our goal of 100,000 subscribers. And of course, we're producing daily fantasy football content in order to help you capture a 2025 fantasy football championship. Now, another way to grant yourself an advantage to potentially capture a 2025 fantasy football championship is by traveling down to the description of the video and checking out Betr. Over the course of this season, I'll be partnering Betr not only to provide you guys picks and putting my predictions to the test, but we're also going to be providing rankings via draft and, of course, every single Sunday morning for the remainder of the season. More information regarding those rankings in the description of the video. All you have to do is sign up via code Andrew today. And once you've signed up using code Andrew, all you have to do is make a first-time deposit minimum of $10, make a first-time play minimum of $1, and of course, you'll get those draft rankings and, of course, weekly rankings sent to you from my email directly to yours. For those of you who are wondering if you could take advantage of the opportunity today, check out the map to the right side of the screen to determine your eligibility based on your current location. And of course, if you play up to 10, you'll get up to $30 instantly. So for those of you interested, check out the link down in the description today. I'll be putting together a couple picks later on in today's episode as we talk about the running back position, and we'll travel on over to their website. Thank you very much for all the support. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's talk about the running back position, beginning with someone who, not by accident, is the number one consensus running back going into 2025. That is Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Bijan Robinson has all the makings of being the perfect RB1 candidate. He's young, 23 years of age. He's been efficient throughout his entire career in the National Football League the last 2 seasons, and he has an elite level of opportunity within this offense. And despite the slow start in 2024, from weeks 6 through 18, he took over the National Football League. Throughout that span of time, was the number one running back in terms of fantasy football, half and full PPR in terms of a point per game average. He was averaging 21.05 fantasy points per game and a half PPR on 24 opportunities per game throughout weeks 6 through 18. I mean, truly, this offense is predicated on finding Bijan Robinson's success, whether it's on the ground or through the air, regardless of who's playing quarterback, whether it be Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix. Even late last season, from weeks 16 through 18, the final 3 games of the season with Michael Penix under center, that's when Bijan Robinson took an even further step forward in order to protect the quarterback, giving him as many touches as possible. He had 26.33 opportunities per game that led to 25.63 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. He's arguably behind one of, if not the best run blocking offensive lines in the National Football League. According to my metrics, he has the second easiest running back strength of schedule going into 2025. If you're given the opportunity and you're lucky enough to draft Bijan Robinson in 2025, make the right decision and have him be your RB1 going into this upcoming season. Now, speaking of luck, if you were lucky enough to draft this next running back, Saquon Barkley, in 2024, again, consider yourself lucky because he broke all the records. I mean, besides the fact that he's the 9th running back in NFL history to surpass 2,000 rushing yards within the regular season, he had a ridiculous run, not only during the regular season, but also including the NFL playoffs. From weeks 1 through 21, he was averaging 24.7 opportunities per game, which led to 21.64 half PPR fantasy points per game. I mean, the level of production was stuff that we've never seen before. He had 7 games last season, regular season and playoffs, in which he totaled 30 or more fantasy points in a half PPR scoring format, all while he was tackled down on the 1-yard line 11 different times. Again, there's a reason why Jalen Hurts had 11 rushing touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. That tush push definitely doing him favors. Thank you, Saquon Barkley. But speaking of Saquon Barkley, why is he number 2? Why can't he repeat going into this year? I mean, we've seen other running backs such as Todd Gurley in 2017 and 2018 lead the National Football League in a half or full PPR scoring format in terms of fantasy point per game average. So why can't Saquon Barkley accomplish that going into 2025? You know, history tells us that when we're relying on a running back that has gotten so many touches in a prior season, oftentimes there is going to be regression. Ultimately, when we look at the history of running backs who have surpassed 2,000 yards during the regular season, every single one of those running backs had a regression the following year. So Saquon Barkley is probably in line. But even if he finds regression, it doesn't mean that he still can't be a top 3 running back, if not even the number 1 overall running back. I purely see it as a risk versus reward conversation. Because of the wear and tear that his body took with 482 total touches last year. Again, that's the most touches a running back has had in a single season since 2014 DeMarco Murray. With all the wear and tear, again, we're anticipating regression, but there's still a lot of reward to be had with Saquon Barkley. Within this offense, an elite offense behind one of the best, if not the best offensive line in the National Football League, there's still a lot of potential and an incredibly high floor and ceiling for Saquon Barkley to potentially accomplish in 2025. Now, speaking of risk versus reward, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey, the last player within the S tier of this conversation. Look, the fact of the matter is Christian McCaffrey is one of the most polarizing selections that you could possibly make within the first couple rounds of your fantasy football draft. And it's purely just a matter of, is he healthy? Because last season, many of us got burnt with his double Achilles tendonitis, and there's a potential in which that could impact his 2025 status. We're still, it's still all up in the air. But as we approach, we have to talk about the risk versus the reward. What is the risk of drafting Christian McCaffrey with early draft capital? First and foremost, you can lose him with injury, like any other running back. But of course, we all know Christian McCaffrey is coming off of his recent injury that is significant. If you were to lose him, you're potentially dooming yourself for the remainder of the season, right? You'd have to 100% draft Isaac Guerendo and handcuff him, which isn't a terrible idea. Whether or not you draft Christian McCaffrey, getting Isaac Guerendo isn't a bad idea, mainly because last season, in games in which he was the starter, he was averaging 17 opportunities per game and 16.23 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. Even Jordan Mason, the beginning of the season last year for the 49ers prior to his injuries, was averaging 22 touches per game and nearly 16 fantasy points per game. So even if he goes down, if you get his handcuff, you're in a decent spot. But the reason why you might want to draft him is because of the potential of the reward that revolves around Christian McCaffrey. We all know what he's capable of. In 2019 and in 2023, he was the number 1 overall fantasy running back in terms of fantasy points per game in those seasons, averaging 25.8 and 23.1. Again, he's behind an offensive line that is going to be top 10 in terms of run blocking PFF grades. He has the 6th easiest strength of schedule at the running back position. In my opinion, all signs are pointing towards Christian McCaffrey having a bounce back season and returning into the top 3 conversation of the running back position. Now, before we move on to the number 4 and to begin the 8 here, I want to remind you guys, for those of you who are trying to get my 2025 fantasy football draft guide, of course, with all my opinions, all my rankings, and countless hours of blood, sweat, and tears put into this overall product. For those of you who are interested, you can travel down to the description of the video and find it via my Patreon. It is exclusively there. Besides going ahead and getting my draft guide, you can ask me unlimited questions, get my rankings up to date, and of course, take advantage of all those perks there. So for those of you interested, check that out today. Thank you very much for all the support. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with the running back conversation with the number 4, Jahmyr Gibbs. Besides the fact that, a guy like Christian McCaffrey has number 1 overall running back potential because he's accomplished it many times in his career. Jahmyr Gibbs is coming off of a season in a full PPR. If you talk about weeks 1 through 18, he technically finished as the number 1 overall running back. But he truly does have potential of getting into that S tier conversation if everything breaks in the right direction for him. Because when we begin the 2024 season and we kind of reminisce on what happened with David Montgomery, he was a solid running back. We're talking about 16.1 touches per game and 17.5 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. But as soon as David Montgomery went down late last season, we saw those numbers increase drastically in terms of opportunity and production for Jahmyr Gibbs. He went from 16 touches per game to 24 touches per game and nearly 31 fantasy points per game in just a half PPR scoring format. Again, there's a lot of potential for Jahmyr Gibbs to claim the number 1 overall running back spot if everything breaks in the right direction. And of course, we see a lesser role out of David Montgomery. Now, with the new offensive coordinator going into 2025, no longer with Ben Johnson there calling the plays with all the trickery that he caused, and of course, all the success that they have found over the last 3 seasons, the question remains, is this offense going to be as efficient? Even if it isn't, if there's a new offensive coordinator in the mix, it could lead to more Jahmyr Gibbs because he is the more effective back between him and Montgomery. It could lead to potentially more even or even negative game scripts in which that leans in the direction of Jahmyr Gibbs within the receiving category. Long story short, we all know that he has an incredibly high floor, but he has incredibly high ceiling to even be the number 1 overall running back. That's why he stays in the top 5 conversation. That's why he's my number 4 going into this upcoming season, whether or not David Montgomery is active and within the lineup. Number 5, we have the one and only Derrick Henry. Speaking of top 5, upside, floor, capacity, Derrick Henry has truly just been unstoppable within those categories for the last 7 seasons. He has been an RB1 in 6 of the last 7. And if it wasn't for the fact that he broke his foot in 2021, he would have been an RB1 every single year for the last 7 seasons. And even though, again, his age is getting up there, age is just a number for Derrick Henry. It really isn't a metric that we need to follow in regards to his potential for success, because he has defied all of the metrics and the norms that a running back has typically faced in the past. When we're talking about his 2024 success, he had his second best statistical season outside of his 2,000-yard rushing year. I mean, he had 1,921 rushing yards last year. He had a 5.97 yard per carry average. I mean, the levels of success he found, I mean, those are career high numbers in terms of yard per carry average. He scored 18 total touchdowns, which tied his career high. I mean, in 2024, averaging 19.57 fantasy points per game in an offense in which Lamar Jackson threw 41 total touchdowns. The quality of the team that surrounds him is going to continue to get him into positions to succeed, to score, and to be fantasy relevant once again in 2025, regardless of his age. I mean, he truly is a Terminator out there, continuing to defy the odds. So if you have an opportunity, draft Derrick Henry. Now, of course, Derrick Henry isn't slowing down anytime soon, as we know. But another running back that truly just doesn't slow down in general is the speed of Achane. Achane has a lot of potential, and there's a reason why I have him at number 6 is because of what he was able to accomplish last season with Tua Tagovailoa under center. Now, again, he is 100% contingent on Tua being healthy. I mean, every single Dolphin is contingent on Tua staying active and healthy, because last season, with Tua Tagovailoa under center, we had Achane averaging 19.5 fantasy points per game and a half PPR and 19.5 opportunities per game. I mean, he scored 11 of his 12 total touchdowns in games in which we had a healthy Tua Tagovailoa. So as long as we're in a situation in which Achane has Tua under center, we're anticipating a lot of success. I mean, even when Tua returned last season from his injury, we saw the Dolphins going from averaging 13.3 points per game as a team to 24.1. He makes a huge impact, and a lot of that impact is found for fantasy purposes within the receiving game. Last season with Tua, Achane averaging 6.64 targets per game. If we go ahead and just look at the numbers as a whole, he was on pace for a 17-game season with Tua to break a lot of records within the receiving category. I mean, even just with the time that he had with Tua last season, he was number 2 in targets, number 1 in receptions, number 1 in receiving yards, and number 1 in receiving touchdown amongst all running backs last season. I mean, with Tua under center, Achane had a 25.8% target rate. That means that 1 out of every 4 routes that he ran, he was targeted on. And when we have Jonnu Smith out of the equation, we're going to be in a situation in which we have a potential in which we're getting that much closer to getting more opportunity within the receiving game for Achane, whether it is a positive, neutral, or negative game script as we approach 2025. Now, last year, I took advantage of all of the receiving upside that Achane had with Tua. And if we go ahead and just look at the current numbers via Betr, I mean, going into week 1, his numbers at 50.5 rushing yards. As soon as we get numbers in regards to him being relevant within the receiving game in terms of total receptions or receiving yards, we are taking advantage of those numbers every single week for the 2025 season. But even in this conversation of 50.5 rushing yards against Indianapolis, who couldn't stop a nosebleed last year within the running game, allowed some of the most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, as a back that is, in a position with zero competition, again, no longer Raheem Mostert behind him, I think Achane is certainly going to find himself with a lot of success in 2025 and primarily sits at number 6 for that exact reason. I mean, do not forget that, again, the Dolphins back in 2023 led the National Football League in running back rushing yards and running back rushing touchdowns. We're not far away from that, and we could potentially see that return here in 2025. All right, moving on to our number 7 to close out the A tier. We have the rookie running back Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. I mean, listen, Ashton Jeanty has a lot of potential for success, besides the fact that he has had himself a historic college career coming off of a season in 2024 in which he had 2,600 rushing yards. He's only second to Barry Sanders in terms of total rushing yards within a single season in NCAA history. He had 152 missed tackles, which is the most amongst any running back in college football history within a single season. The amount of success that he found is not by accident, and the amount of success that he's going to find in 2025 is just going to be indicative of the amount of success that he found in college football. As he joins the Raiders, there's a lot of conversations regarding the potential impact of Chip Kelly as his offensive coordinator. But before we even get into that conversation, history tells us that when you draft a running back as high as the Raiders drafted Ashton Jeanty this offseason, you're going to find immediate success. In the past decade, running backs that have been drafted in the top 12 of their NFL respective draft. I mean, there's a special group of running backs: Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Todd Gurley, Jahmyr Gibbs. Not a single one of those running backs ranked below RB11 within their rookie year. I'm expecting a lot of success, especially considering, again, we talked about Chip Kelly and his impact. Chip Kelly is going to be the offensive coordinator of this team. He's the former offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles back in 2013 through 2015. Throughout that span of time, the running backs for that team throughout those 3 seasons were averaging 104 rushing attempts, 121 targets, and 530 opportunities per game for an average of 390 fantasy points per season by the running back room. I mean, LaShawn McCoy in 2013, the number 2 ranked running back. In 2014, the number 12 ranked running back. And when we have an improved team with Pete Carroll there as the head coach and an improved offense with Geno Smith there, I mean, we have a 3-down back that is going to be unleashed upon the National Football League, fresh and ready to go. Ashton Jeanty is a player that you need to have on roster when we're talking about elite running backs in the A tier. All right, moving on to the next running back, we have Chase Brown. I mean, look, Chase Brown, I think, is probably one of my favorite running backs going into this upcoming season. I am certainly trying to take advantage of his current ADP in comparison to where I have him ranked. Again, he is currently being drafted near like RB 12 to even 15 at times, but it just depends on what the scoring format is. If we're talking about a half PPR, I'll take him at 8 overall. Again, I'm not going to draft him 8th. I'll try to take advantage of his ADP, but he truly is finding himself a lot of success within the Cincinnati Bengals offense and truly did follow the footsteps of Joe Mixon, who was an RB1 from 2021 to 2023. And of course, Chase Brown last season made himself a lot of efforts to becoming an RB1 after Zach Moss went down with injury from weeks 9 through 17. I mean, 24 opportunities per game and 18.25 fantasy points per game, playing 85% of the offensive snaps throughout that span of time, handling 96% of the backfield opportunities that came out of the Cincinnati Bengals offense. So throughout that span of time, weeks 9 through 17, he was number 5 in terms of fantasy points per game on average amongst all running backs, number 6 overall. He found himself a boatload of success in regards to the receiving category, 5.5 targets per game, a 17-game pace of the full Unleashed Chase Brown is 94 targets, 81 receptions, 635 receiving yards, which in 2024 would have topped every single category and been number 1. The fact of the matter is, if the stats that I've just conveyed to you aren't convincing you enough, perhaps the offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals can convince you. This offseason, he has said the following. Let me just go ahead and read this quote. I think Chase Brown is going to, by the end of the season, be a household name. He's everything that Austin Eckler was, and I think by the time the season's over, you'll know who he is. He was talking to a reporter in regards to how much, faith he has in Chase Brown being the lead running back of this offense. If we're comparing him to Austin Eckler, I mean, it was just a couple seasons ago in which Austin Eckler was the number 1 running back in fantasy football. How did he accomplish that? Receiving work and scoring touchdowns. 2 categories that he was able to take advantage of last season and that he's absolutely going to take advantage once again in 2025. All right, moving up to our number 9, we have Bucky Irving. Listen, Bucky Irving, yes, he had a slow start to begin his 2024 campaign as a rookie running back, but eventually he did dethrone Rachaad White, a running back who was an RB1 the year prior. What he was able to accomplish was incredible. I mean, from weeks 12 through 19, Bucky Irving, in the final 7 games of the Buccaneers season, including the NFL playoffs, was averaging 21 opportunities per game and 18.7 fantasy points per game on just 57% of the offensive snaps. Again, he was taking over the league, and this was all while he was sharing opportunities with Rachaad White. And despite all this taking place, the reason why he was able to dethrone Rachaad White was his hyper efficiency, which truly won him the workload and the job and is going to continue to carry him for this 2025 season. Last season, he averaged 5.42 yards per carry amongst all running backs with a minimum of 50 attempts. That ranked him number 5 amongst all players. And he had a 4.03 yard after contact per attempt average, which was number 1 amongst all running backs last season. He not only was number 1 in that category, but also number 1 in terms of avoided tackles per attempt and routes ran. The fact of the matter is, he's efficient and he is dynamic with the ball in his hand. And even late last season, he really did take over and eliminate Rachaad White. In the final 2 games of the season, including the NFL playoffs, Rachaad White had 3 total touches in comparison to Bucky Irving's 40 touches. Even with Liam Cohen leaving and becoming the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars and Josh Grizzard becoming the new offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 years, I still expect Bucky Irving to be the lead back and be a dynamic force in 2025. Moving on to our number 10, we have Kyren Williams. Look, we all know Kyren Williams. He's a must draft, and he's associated with one of the best offenses in the National Football League that could really go places in 2025. I mean, just looking back at last season, weeks 1 through 17, he was number 6 overall, and he was number 10 in terms of fantasy points per game on average, averaging 15.94 on 22 opportunities per game. Listen, we all know that Kyren Williams is going to be the lead back and there's no rotation because Sean McVay truly just doesn't prefer to have a rotation, whether you do have a rookie running back coming in or Blake Corum coming off of injury. The fact of the matter is, it's all Kyren Williams all day. Last season, he handled 83% of the opportunity and scored 89% of the backfield fantasy points for the Los Angeles Rams. And even though he does lack receiving upside, he makes up with that in regards to his rushing upside, having scored 31 total touchdowns in the last 28 regular season games he has played. I mean, amongst all running backs in the last 2 seasons combined, he is number 1 in terms of red zone rushing attempts and touchdowns. He continues to be in that category, then he's going to continue to be a top 10 running back for fantasy purposes, especially when we take into account we'll have a healthy wide receiver core, we'll have a healthy offensive line, which didn't exist last season. I mean, going into this upcoming year, based on PFF grades, the Rams are expected to be the second highest graded run blocking offensive line. I'm expecting a lot of upside for Kyren Williams. Moving on to our number 11, we have Josh Jacobs, running back of the Green Bay Packers, who throughout his entire career, as long as he has been healthy, he has been an RB1 and top 12 overall. And going into this upcoming year, we're anticipating another healthy season of upside. I mean, as long as you have Jordan Love under center, which again, at times last season was not the case due to the injury that he sustained early on. But as long as you have Jordan Love there in the equation, Josh Jacobs is going to be fantastic. In the games in which they played together, 14 of them last year, Josh Jacobs averaged 17.16 fantasy points per game on 19.86 touches per game. Again, the opportunities there, the workhorse production is still active, and I mean, he's going ahead and setting career highs, not only in yards after contact per attempt. He was number 4 in terms of missed tackles forced last season. He had 33 rushes of 10 or more yards, which was number 6 amongst all running backs. He still has a lot left in the tank. In an offense that granted their running backs the 4th most opportunities amongst all teams, they had the 2nd highest run versus pass rate in regards to passing attempts by quarterbacks versus rushing attempts by running backs. They were only second to the Eagles. This is a run-first team that is predicated on getting the ball to Josh Jacobs. And as long as he continues to maintain as the number 1 option, you know, the receiving work, the touchdowns are going to continue to go in his direction. Marshawn Lloyd had an injury yesterday, just like he did last season, which could lead to even more opportunity for Josh Jacobs this season. I mean, in the last 11 games of his 2024 campaign, he scored 15 rushing touchdowns. The opportunities are going to continue to go in his direction, and I'm anticipating him to lead this Packers offense to success. Moving on to our number 12, we have Jonathan Taylor. Look, Jonathan Taylor is a little bit tricky, very similar to Kyren Williams in the idea that he doesn't find himself with much receiving upside, but what he's able to accomplish on the ground really does make the biggest difference. I mean, he is a former number 1 overall running back in 2021, but he has also missed 16 games in the last 3 seasons due to injury. And even though he's been plagued by injury, when he is healthy, he is a dynamic player. I mean, going back to 2023, from weeks 7 through 18, he averaged 16.75 fantasy points per game. Last season, weeks 1 through 18, while healthy, 24 opportunities per game and 17 fantasy points per game and a half PPR, having scored 18 touchdowns in the last 19 healthy games that he has participated in. The fact of the matter is, he has a lot of upside. He is within an offense that has a fantastic offensive line, ranked number 6 in terms of run blocking grades, according to PFF going into this upcoming season. An offense that gave their running backs the 9th most attempts. They had the 8th most running back rushing yards, 8th most running back rushing touchdowns this last season. Everything is pointing in the direction of Jonathan Taylor once again being an RB1, as long as he stays healthy. Because again, what he was able to accomplish late last season is just a taste of what we could potentially see this year. I mean, the final 3 games, you know, of the fantasy football playoffs in 2024 was all Jonathan Taylor, averaging 33 touches per game and 30.3 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. I know there's a quarterback competition, but hopefully that gets settled and Jonathan Taylor continues to lead this offense to the promised land. Moving on to our number 13, we have Alvin Kamara. Look, the fact of the matter is, Alvin Kamara truly is one of the best fantasy football running backs of all time. And what he's been able to accomplish in the last 8 seasons of his career is ridiculous. He's been a top 12 running back in 6 of the last 8, and he has been top 6 in terms of fantasy points per game on average in 6 of the last 8. The last 2 seasons in specific have been incredible. I mean, the amount of opportunities that he's been able to handle. I mean, 2023, 20.25 touches per game, leading to 15.8 fantasy points per game. That was number 4th ranked amongst all running backs throughout weeks 4 through 16 in which he was healthy. You go to 2024, 22.08 touches per game, and a 16.64 fantasy point per game average, number 5 overall between weeks 1 through 14, and number 6 in terms of fantasy points per game on average. All those numbers are incredible. But the only number that I've yet to mention is the amount of missed games that Alvin Kamara has had. He has missed 7 total games in the last 2 seasons. So the question is, are we going to get a full healthy season out of Alvin Kamara? And do we need a full healthy season out of Alvin Kamara? Can we take 14 healthy weeks and be satisfied with that, considering the level of production that he is putting forth? I think the argument could be made for that. I mean, when you look at this offense with a new quarterback, with a new offensive play caller, with Kellen Moore coming as the head coach, there's going to be a lot of effort in the direction of Alvin Kamara getting involved, whether it's on the ground or through the air. I mean, last season, with all the negative game scripts, he had 11 of his 13 games consisting of 4 or more receptions, 9 of his 13 games, 5 or more receptions. If we're going to be in negative game scripts, I mean, with a running back that is in a situation with no Taysom Hill early on in the season, of course, which is going to make an impact of his rushing touchdown upside. On top of that, the 4th easiest running back strength of schedule at the position, I'm expecting Alvin Kamara to find himself another successful season here in 2025. Number 14, we have James Cook. Look, James Cook, back-to-back seasons of being a top 12 running back. So, Andrew, why is he out of the top 12 for you? In a half PPR, the biggest concern that revolves around James Cook is whether or not he can sustain the volume of touchdowns that he scored this most recent year. Because when we look at 2023 James Cook with Joe Brady in a kind of run-first committed offense of the Buffalo Bills. In 2023, weeks 11 through 20, with Joe Brady kind of leading the charge in that category, we had a situation in which, James Cook averaging 20 touches per game and 14 fantasy points per game. You fast forward to this most recent season, talking about regular and postseason, only 16 touches per game and a total of 16.5 fantasy points per game. Ultimately, if we're going to see less touches per game and more fantasy points per game, that doesn't make sense unless you are scoring more touchdowns, which again, luckily for James Cook, he was able to tie Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs with 16 total rushing touchdowns, ranked number 1 in the National Football League. So as we approach this upcoming season, the question is, can he repeat? Well, he definitely got more of a quality share of opportunity, especially within the red zone. If we look at his 2023 campaign, 31 attempts in the red zone for 1 rushing touchdown in comparison to 2024 with only 48 attempts. Sure, that's still 17 more, but he scored 11 more touchdowns with 12 total within the red zone. So if the quality of the attempts go up, then he can continue to score double-digit touchdowns. But is he going to score 16 this year within the rushing category? That's kind of rare to see within any running back conversation, especially considering the lack of total touches. I mean, he only had 145 opportunities and 239 total touches this most recent season. I mean, that was the lowest amongst all RB1s in 2024, which again makes it highly volatile as to whether or not he's going to continue to expand within that conversation or at least maintain, while we have Ray Davis expanding his role. We have Josh Allen guaranteeing his 10 to 12 rushing touchdowns every single season in an elite offense. I still think James Cook is fantastic. It's just I don't expect him to score as many touchdowns as he did this most recent season. Moving on to our number 15, we have Breece Hall. Now, there's a lot of new in New York. And for the New York Jets, besides the fact that you have a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, we still have Breece Hall, which is a great running back and an elite level talent. And as long as he's given opportunity, he should find success. And that's why I have him as our number 15 to begin the D tier. Even though he is in the technical D tier, truly is one of the more dynamic running backs that we all want to get, hopefully falling down the draft board to us this upcoming season. So when we look at the 2025 New York Jets, we have Tanner Engstrom as the new offensive coordinator, the former 2023 and 2024 Lions passing game coordinator. Hopefully he learned from Ben Johnson, as Ben Johnson was able to have a top 3 offense in terms of running back opportunities in each of the last 3 years as a member of the Detroit Lions. Obviously, this raises questions as to whether or not we're going to have a 2-headed monster with the potential of Braylon Allen getting more workload. Or are we going to see Justin Fields be that second running back in which his rushing upside could diminish the value of Breece Hall? The fact of the matter is, as we approach this upcoming season, we know that Breece Hall is young, he is efficient, and if he's given the opportunity that he is, due, he's going to find himself a lot of success behind the 12th ranked offensive line in terms of run blocking grades. They have the 10th easiest strength of schedule at the running back position. And last season, prior to his injury from weeks 1 through 11, was averaging 14.57 fantasy points per game on 19 opportunities per game. His current ADP sure has him at RB 12, 13, but he truly would need a lot of receiving upside and touchdown exclusivity if he wants to go ahead and get into that range. As it currently stands for me, I like him as my RB 15, and that's where I'm expecting him to find a lot of success, unless we're going to find ourselves with the Jets winning a lot more games than I currently anticipate. Moving on to our number 16, we have Chuba Hubbard. Look, Chuba Hubbard is one of my favorite running backs, but I do want to go ahead and just take it easy with him and not overrank him too far, because I do anticipate to see Rico Dowdle getting himself a lot of workload. Now, I will talk about the positives that revolve around Chuba Hubbard. First and foremost, Dave Canales, in his first year as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers this most recent season, was a success, especially late last season, in which Bryce Young found himself success, and they were finally committed to winning games. I mean, when we look at Chuba Hubbard from weeks 3 through 16, he was averaging 21 touches per game and 16.08 fantasy points per game. That would make him number 9 in terms of fantasy points per game on average throughout that 13-game span, handling 83% of the backfield opportunity for the Carolina Panthers. Again, no competition. And again, he was able to accomplish this because of his hyper efficiency and, of course, the injury that took place to Jonathan Brooks. But his hyper efficiency, I mean, we're talking about number 11 amongst all running backs with a 4.78 yard per carry average, number 8 amongst all running backs with a 3.46 yard after contact per attempt average. I mean, again, he earned himself his new contract, in which he was able to sign in November of last year. He earned himself a starting job and is going to continue to be the starting running back of this team. My only concern is, can his upside be met of being a higher ranked running back than number 16 if his receiving upside isn't met? Last season, he was the most inefficient running back within the receiving category, with a total of 43 receptions leading to 171 receiving yards. That ranked 93 amongst all running backs in terms of a 3.98 yard per reception average. It's just not going to cut it, especially considering Rico Dowdle and his receiving prowess. Sure, they're behind the 12th ranked offensive line in terms of run blocking grades. And sure, they have the easiest strength of schedule at the running back position. But without that receiving upside unlocked and Bryce Young finding himself comfortable within the rushing category himself, it does leave Chuba Hubbard in this middle RB2 conversation, unless he finds himself surprising me with a lot more receiving upside and completely nullifying and snuffing the potential of Rico Dowdle out early. I think number 16 is incredibly safe and still finds himself with upside in 2025. Let's move on to a rookie running back, Omarion Hampton. Listen, we talked about the potential for history of success with Ashton Jeanty. That continues with Omarion Hampton. Again, in the past decade, we have seen 14 different running backs selected in the first round of their NFL respective draft. 8 of those running backs were RB1s in their rookie year. 3 were RB2s, and 1 was an RB3. That's 11 of those 14 running backs finding top 24 success, which is an 80% success rate. I have him at number 17 as it currently stands because, again, when we look at the last 5 seasons, we're talking about Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who were all top 22 ranked within their rookie season. And we currently have a situation in which Najee Harris is dealing with an injury, which of course is not football related, obviously was injured off the field, but is still potentially impacting the entire equation of this backfield. So as we approach this upcoming season, let's remember that teams don't use first round draft capital on running backs just to have them stand on the sideline. He is going to be the starting running back, whether it's early or whether it's later in the season, and he's going to take over and produce within this run-first approach that is led by Greg Roman, their offensive coordinator, a former offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, for many of the seasons in which Greg Roman has been an offensive coordinator in the National Football League, his team has been in the top 12 of rushing categories on many occasions, especially attempts. When we look at last season, J.K. Dobbins within this offense, coming off of the injury hell that he had throughout his entire career, was able to surmise a 14.03 fantasy point per game average on 18.75 opportunities per game. While he was healthy last season from weeks 1 through 11, Dobbins was the number 13 overall running back in terms of fantasy points per game on average and number 14 overall amongst our running backs. When we talk about this offensive line, that again just inked their left tackle, one of the best in the league. They signed a brand new right guard. They still have Joe Alt going into the second season. They're ranked 10th amongst all teams in terms of run blocking grades according to PFF. Going into this year, even though, Najee Harris is going to be there, I think 17 is proper. I mean, if Najee Harris was not in the equation, I would anticipate top 12 upside for someone like Omarion Hampton. But we're going to have to wait and see the status of Najee Harris, who, again, I believe is going to play the Gus Edwards role, which means potentially anywhere between 8 to 9 rushing attempts per game over the course of the season until, of course, Omarion Hampton is able to blow him out of the water based on his efficiency. Because, again, when we talk about Najee Harris, since 2021, only averaging 3.9 yards per carry and 2.9 yards after contact per attempt, which both ranked very low amongst all running backs with 300 plus attempts in their career. I'm anticipating a lot of success for the Chargers offense and, of course, for Hampton to begin the 2025 NFL season. Moving on to our number 18, we have Kenneth Walker. Listen, Kenneth Walker, this is truly his make or break season. This is not only the final year of his rookie deal, but he has truly found himself in situations in which he has found himself injured and losing opportunities to Zach Charbonnet, who has been the more efficient back as of late. Now, even though Kenneth Walker is going to be given the first attempt to being the lead running back of this offense, he really needs to act quickly and dominate. Going into 2025, we have a new offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. We have a new quarterback. We have a new kind of scheme as we approach with Klint Kubiak's approach. You have to remember, Klint Kubiak, the former 2024 Saints offensive coordinator, he helped, again, guy like Alvin Kamara be number 6 in terms of fantasy points per game on average last season. As a team, in terms of running back opportunities, ranked 8th amongst all teams in the league. Back in 2021 was the Vikings offensive coordinator, led to Dalvin Cook being a top 11 running back in terms of fantasy point per game on average, and they were ranked 10th in terms of running back opportunities in that given year. So all signs are pointing towards a lot of opportunity and a lot of potential upside for Kenneth Walker. He could very easily finish as a top 12 running back for fantasy purposes if he is healthy for all 17 games. In the event in which he is not, of course, we may be in a situation in which he could lose his job to, a guy like Zach Charbonnet. Again, last season, in games in which Walker wasn't active, Zach Charbonnet was averaging 19 opportunities and 17.62 fantasy points per game as an incredibly efficient runner of the football. Again, there have been a lot of injuries in Kenneth Walker's career. We're not hoping for injuries. We are hoping that he avoids them and meets his potential, because as of the last couple seasons, ankle, calf, quad, ankle, hernia, there have been so many things that have plagued him, but all you need to do is give him opportunity. I mean, we go back to last season. In the 11 healthy games he played, opportunities led to success. 18 opportunities per game, leading to 14.38 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format. In games in which he was given 12 or more opportunities in terms of rushing attempts, was averaging over 16.3 fantasy points per game in a half PPR. The potential is there for Kenneth Walker. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to be able to take it and run away with it this season. Moving on to our number 19, we have James Conner. Speaking of staying healthy, we have a running back that has never been able to stay healthy for his entire career. Since he has become a starter back in 2018, he has never played a full healthy season. And going into this upcoming season marks his age 30 season, which again, all signs are pointing towards potential, regression. But I think that there's a lot of potential for James Conner to find another season of success, considering the last 4 seasons, he is ranked as a top 20 overall running back in a half PPR scoring format. And that has mainly been due to the fact that there's been no backfield competition. And as it currently stands, I don't really see there being much competition. We go back to 2023. From weeks 13 through 18, he was given 5 consecutive games of 17 or more touches. We jump into the 2024 season with Drew Petzing as the offensive coordinator, giving him 17 or more touches in 12 of his 14 healthy games. As long as we're going to be in a situation in which James Conner's healthy and this offense continues to want to run the ball as they have in each of the last 2 seasons, when we're talking about the production level of James Conner averaging 15.28 fantasy points per game in 2023, 15.99 in 2024, improving his efficiency levels. I mean, we're talking about James Conner in the last 2 seasons within this Cardinals offense, hitting career highs in yards per carry and yards after contact per attempt in the last 2 years. A lot of success has been had. He has himself an opportunity to continue that level of success within this offense, taking on the 3rd easiest strength of schedule at the running back position. I mean, again, he's been a top 20 running back for the last 4 consecutive seasons. If he stays healthy, or even if he misses a couple games, he should very easily accomplish it once again. Now, speaking of being able to be a top 24 running back on a consistent basis, we have DeAndre Swift entering the conversation, who is ranked as a top 24 running back every single season of his career. In the last 5 seasons, 18, 19, 22, 23, and 19, while averaging in a half PPR scoring format, 13.7, 14.6, 11.9, 11.9, and 11.4. He has never in a single season averaged less than 11.4 fantasy points per game throughout his entire 5-year career. And now he has an opportunity to potentially be involved with some excitement. Like, even though last season, it's hard to believe that he was able to average 11 fantasy points per game, especially considering the start of the year. Weeks 1 through 3 of 2024, he averaged 1.84 yards per carry. Eventually, from weeks 4 through 18, picked it up, found himself averaging 4.13 yards per carry, came back to existence and being relevant. But as we approach 2025, we have Ben Johnson entering the conversation, a new offensive coordinator that has helped the Lions really dominate at the point of attack, top 3 in terms of running back opportunities in each of the last 3 seasons. We have presumed offensive line improvements as they have brought in a plethora of different offensive linemen via free agency, via draft, and via the trades that they have made this offseason. So with improved offensive line, with an improved play calling offense, with the 11th easiest strength of schedule at the position, I'm anticipating Ben Johnson to get DeAndre Swift to a relevant point, which he has done back in 2022 when DeAndre Swift was with the Lions. Now, sure, there may be a conversation of a two-headed monster, especially considering, we have seen guys like David Montgomery and Jamal Williams utilized within these offenses of the Detroit Lions alongside of DeAndre Swift and Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe Ben Johnson wants to utilize Roschon Johnson and gets himself a little bit of that goal line opportunity. That could impact DeAndre Swift, but I still anticipate him to be a top 20 option within this incredibly improved Bears offense. Moving on to our number 21, speaking of David Montgomery, on the subject of Lions running backs and Lions offensive coordinators, David Montgomery has been incredible. The fact that I have him at number 21 isn't me stating that I anticipate him to be less effective going into this year. I just expect him to get less opportunities because of what the efficiency numbers of Jahmyr Gibbs have become. So yes, David Montgomery is still going to be incredibly relevant as an RB2. Just the last 2 seasons in fantasy football, he's averaged 15.03 fantasy points per game and 14.55 fantasy points per game when healthy. Prior to this most recent season's injury that he had, when we compare his numbers to Jahmyr Gibbs, they were a lot closer than people remember. We're talking about 185 versus 186 rushing attempts. We're talking about 38 versus 49 targets. Again, very close, even though you may think that Jahmyr Gibbs is the better receiving back. We still had a lot of opportunity going in the direction of David Montgomery. And we had 12 total touchdowns for David Montgomery, while we had 14 from Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, this offense is predicated on having 2 running backs find success. And I'm anticipating for David Montgomery once again this season to do exactly that. Even with, unfortunately, Ben Johnson leaving, I anticipate David Montgomery to be one of the primary rushing threats within the red zone. He was number 4 in terms of rushing attempts and rushing touchdowns inside the 5-yard line amongst all running backs last season. So why would that overall opportunity dissipate if he's going to continue to be efficient and continue to find himself finding success? The only thing that I could potentially anticipate is perhaps the offensive coordinator change, coming to the realization that Gibbs needs to be on the field more. Sure, that may lead to less opportunities for David Montgomery, but even if he loses, a handful of touches, 2 or 3 touches per game, as long as the touchdowns are going to be there, he should be relevant. He, in my opinion, is arguably the most valuable handcuff in all of fantasy football, behind one of, if not the best run blocking offensive lines in the league. Even if he's going to miss 3 to 4 games within a given season, I still see top 24 upside for David Montgomery on a consistent basis. Moving on to our number 22, we have the one and only Aaron Jones. Listen, Aaron Jones is getting up there in age, but he has still been hyper relevant in fantasy. But as we approach 2025, there's been some conversations regarding Aaron Jones potentially losing a step or potentially even being ranked far lower than number 22. The way that I see it, I know that Jordan Mason was traded for. Until Jordan Mason is going to completely out-snap Aaron Jones, which very easily could happen if he outproduces him in training camp. But until that happens, I still anticipate Aaron Jones to get himself a lot of opportunity and a lot of touches within this offense that is going to be relevant. An offense that has himself a great offensive line. And even though they are, changing quarterbacks, going from Sam Darnold to J.J. McCarthy, this is an offense that is still predicated on running the ball consistently with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays here. Just this last season, Aaron Jones, 13.14 fantasy points per game in the 16 games in which he played. Again, that's number 16 overall amongst all running backs between weeks 1 through 17, and number 18 in terms of fantasy points per game on average. Again, highly efficient, 4.46 yards per carry, over 3 yards after contact per attempt, in an offense that, again, gave their running backs the 13th most opportunities amongst all in the league. And as long as opportunity continues to lead to success, I anticipate Aaron Jones to be a relevant option. Even if he misses a couple games here and there, I don't anticipate, Jordan Mason to come in here and completely take the job away from Aaron Jones. Therefore, I have him in the top 24 capacity ranking going into this upcoming season. Now, another running back that has kind of dropped in terms of their overall ranking as of late because they're getting up there in age and could potentially see themselves some injury risk this upcoming season is Joe Mixon. And his injury risk is far more legitimate than, David Montgomery or Aaron Jones, as they're currently healthy. But Joe Mixon, we want to be cautious with him, and that's why I have him in number 23. And if we get more information regarding him being healthy and practicing, then his ranking will go up. Again, like I mentioned, rankings are subject to change. But as it currently stands, he's expected to be out for an extended period of time with a frustrating foot injury. That has been the report that has come out, and there's a lot of time between now and week 1 against the LA Rams. But until we get some positive information, he is going to be a lower ranked RB2, if not an RB3, with the potential of us, if you draft him, having to grab someone like Nick Chubb in order to have the handcuff on point. Again, Mixon is coming off of his best season of his career in terms of a 17.58 fantasy point per game average, having scored 13 rushing touchdowns in the 14 games in which he played last season at a full healthy capacity. When we introduce his late season success from weeks 6 through 17, was the number 6 overall running back in fantasy football. And this is all accomplished after sustaining a week 2 high ankle sprain. This is an offense that gets a new offensive coordinator. Sure, doesn't have the greatest offensive line. They have 4 new offensive linemen that are going to be starting for this team, which isn't promising. They may be passing the ball a bunch this upcoming season, but their defense is going to be strong. They're going to keep them in games, and they're going to be in at least neutral game scripts in which Joe Mixon should be given an ample set of opportunity. As long as he's healthy, he will be fantasy relevant and he will move up my rankings. But as it currently stands with the injury concern, I want to be cautious with him, even though in 3 of the last 4 seasons, he has been top 7 in terms of fantasy point per game on average amongst all running backs in the National Football League. All right, let's move on to our number 24 to close out the top 24 conversation. Let's go ahead and begin by talking about, some rookie running backs. We just talked about some veterans like Montgomery, Jones, and Mixon. Let's talk about some rookies, beginning with TreVeyon Henderson. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to mention this statistic once again for RJ Harvey in the next section, but for those of you listening, listen closely. In the last 5 seasons, we have had 11 running backs selected in the second round of their respective NFL draft. 9 of those healthy running backs, okay, so when we exclude Breece Hall and Jonathan Brooks, who had season-ending ACL injuries, the 9 healthy running backs of the remaining of those second-round picks, 1 was an RB1, 4 were RB2s. Now, if we exclude Charbonnet, James Cook, and A.J. Dillon, who joined offenses who already had pre-existing top 20 running backs, that would leave us with 5 of the 6 running backs finding immediate success at a top 24 capacity within their rookie season. That's an 83% success rate, and that's what I anticipate for TreVeyon Henderson, as he should be able to supplant Ramondre Stevenson as a starting running back of this offense. I mean, in the past decade, we have seen 21 running backs selected within the second round, all of which who had 175 or more rushing attempts ranked within the top 36. Henderson should be relevant and is joining an offense that is much improved, not only in terms of the offensive line category with some new draft picks, some new members, but we also have more receivers. We have a better offensive coordinator that should allow this offense to score more points and put Henderson in positions to succeed. Josh McDaniels, again, returning to the Patriots is huge, especially for the running back conversation, as he has proven to be able to support running backs of the past. We've recently seen guys like Damian Harris back in 2021 be the number 13 overall running back. 2022, Josh Jacobs with the Raiders, while Josh McDaniels was there, was the number 30 overall running back. We have seen running backs be relevant within a Josh McDaniels offense, and I anticipate that to be the case this upcoming season, even though we will see a lot of early Ramondre Stevenson. Give it some time, and eventually we're going to see Henderson take over this job and be the clear and away RB1 of this offense. Again, this is a running back that you're investing in, not to find immediate success, but maybe 1 month into the season could very easily take over and find himself being an incredibly relevant fantasy upside running back. Number 25, we have RJ Harvey. Like I mentioned before, I'm going to repeat the stat that I just mentioned in regards to Henderson. When we talk about the last 5 seasons of the National Football League, there have been 11 running backs selected within the second round of their respective NFL draft. 9 of those running backs had healthy rookie seasons, and 5 of those 9 were top 24 ranked. If we exclude Charbonnet, Cook, and Dillon, who were all joining offenses with pre-existing top 20 running backs, we have a 5 out of 6 success rate, which is 83% in regards to second round running backs finding success. Now we are in a conversation which is a little bit sketchier because we have RJ Harvey joining an offense that should be kind of looking to get him involved when they're utilizing draft capital at this point to get him within the offense, but you also have J.K. Dobbins. I do want to mention that I do think that J.K. Dobbins signing this offseason is more of an indictment on the potential production of McLaughlin and Estime rather than it potentially impacting RJ Harvey. I think this is going to be a situation in which J.K. Dobbins is going to get himself 8 to 10 rushing attempts, but the rest of the workload going in the direction of Harvey. An offense in which they have gotten themselves a lot of usage from their running backs within the receiving game, which should be Harvey's upside. I mean, from 2023 to 2024, they targeted their running backs the second most times amongst all teams, 257 times, only second to the Jets. Again, I anticipate a lot of success. And when we think about Sean Payton, the primary play caller of this offense, and his history of pass catching running backs, Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, Pierre Thomas, Alvin Kamara, we've seen some all-time fantasy relevant backs throughout their careers, as long as they've been associated with Sean Payton. I mean, Sean Payton was able to allow Javonte Williams to be a top 30 running back in the last 2 seasons consecutively, even though he was hyper inefficient. When you're associated with Sean Payton, relevance is going to be found, which is why we have 25 as RJ Harvey. Moving on to another rookie running back, we have Kaleb Johnson. I'm excited about Kaleb Johnson because the role that he is going to be stepping into is a lot more secure, I think, off of the rip in comparison to Harvey and Henderson, who will be competing to try to take out guys like Stevenson and Dobbins. Kaleb Johnson joins an offense that no longer has Najee Harris, which again is going to be the biggest sell for kind of Kaleb Johnson finding immediate success. Now, when we talk about the history of success from third round running backs selected in the NFL draft. In the last 5 seasons, there have been 15 running backs selected in the 3rd round. We have seen one RB1, one RB2, and one RB3. Those players being Antonio Gibson, Devon Achane, and Tyjae Spears. If we're going to get our running back legitimate opportunities in their rookie year, success is going to be found. And replacing Najee Harris pretty much guarantees legitimate opportunities. We're talking about Najee Harris, who last season, within this offense, 263 rushing attempts and 48 targets. Sure, he averaged 11 fantasy points per game with a 3.97 yard per carry average, but the lack of efficiency is not what I'm focusing on because Kaleb Johnson is going to be more efficient than Najee. And if we're going to assume that we're going to potentially have Kaleb Johnson with 260, 280, maybe 300 total opportunities in his rookie year, when we look at the last decade of football, rookie running backs with 250 plus rushing attempts consist of guys like Zeke, Najee, Alfred Morris, Saquon Barkley, Trent Richardson, Doug Martin, and Leonard Fournette, all running backs that found incredible success within their rookie years. I think the Steelers, with Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator, again, this most recent season, number 3 amongst all teams in terms of RB opportunities with 536. Back in 2023, as the primary play caller of the Falcons, was number 1 in that category. Sure, Kaleb Johnson is not a 3-down back. Jaylen Warren will be spelling him on 3rd downs, but I anticipate a lot of upside in terms of rushing opportunity and red zone utilization for Kaleb Johnson to take advantage of. I think the number 26 ranked may be his floor going into the season. Moving on to our number 27, we have Isiah Pacheco. Look, the fact of the matter is that this time last year, we talked about Isiah Pacheco in an incredible manner. I anticipated him to have an unimpeded volume of opportunity because when we looked back at 2023, from weeks 1 through 22, in that Super Bowl run that the Chiefs had, he was averaging 19 touches per game and 14 fantasy points per game. So why not more opportunity in 2024? And in weeks 1 through 2, prior to his injury, 21 opportunities per game and 14.2 half PPR fantasy points per game, up until, unfortunately, he had himself his fractured fibula. Again, he was on pace to be that RB1 that we anticipated, but unfortunately got injured and never was the same since he came back. But going into the season, another year separated from that injury, I do anticipate to see a lot of success from Isiah Pacheco because, again, we have seen success from running backs within this offense as early as this most recent season. Kareem Hunt in 2024, from weeks 4 through 12, was averaging 22 opportunities per game and 13.71 fantasy points per game off the couch. Isiah Pacheco has that potential, if not more. Currently, Isiah Pacheco has an incredible discount to his name because when we look back at 2024, he had top 12 running back ADP. Now he's being selected in the 6th round of drafts. I think the discount is worth the risk and the potential for upside that is associated with Isiah Pacheco going into this upcoming season because he could be not only a 3-down back, but associated with one of the best offenses in the league. Number 28 to begin the G tier, we have Bijan Robinson Jr. Look, Bijan Robinson, when healthy, is great. 12.07 fantasy points per game in the 12 healthy games last season with 16.25 touches per game. But it was even better prior to the injury that he sustained last season. And that is going to be a topic of conversation. Can he stay healthy? Because prior to the injury, 13.5 fantasy points per game was in that top 15 category. The running back position was dominating. But again, throughout his career, has found himself with hamstring strains and ankle injuries that really has forced him to miss 5 games, outright due to injury and left 2 games due to injury in the last 2 seasons. So that's 7 missed games, unfortunately. We know this offense has a lot of value with Jaden Daniels, now, of course, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, Terry McLaurin, an improved offensive line. I'm anticipating success here. And even if we're going to see Bijan Robinson miss some time, as long as he's active for majority of the season, we should see a lot of fantasy upside. I mean, even in the games in which he missed and Austin Eckler took over, Eckler was averaging 13.73 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. I'm anticipating a lot of success. And what I want to talk about in regards to Bijan Robinson, when I was on Betr earlier today and checking out some of the numbers, his current number sits at 58.5 in terms of rushing yards for week 1. That's a number that I'm willing to go ahead and take advantage of because they take on the New York Giants, a team that could not stop a run to save their lives last season. I mean, week 2 against that defense, Bijan Robinson had 133 rushing yards. In week 9 against that defense, even though Bijan Robinson was absent, the running back rotation for the Washington Commanders combined for 114 rushing yards. I'm anticipating a lot of success. That's probably a number that I'm willing to take alongside of Achane's probable rushing number going into week 1 of the season. But as it currently stands, I'm expecting a lot of success for someone like Bijan Robinson this upcoming season, assuming, of course, he can stay healthy. Moving on to our number 29, we have Tony Pollard. Look, Tony Pollard, there's 2 different Tony Pollards. There's one with and without Tyjae Spears. Very similar to a with and without David Montgomery situation to Jahmyr Gibbs, but not as high of upside. Without Spears, 12.47 fantasy points per game on 23 opportunities per game. With Spears, still 17 opportunities per game, but 10.32 fantasy points per game and a half PPR, and a significantly lesser snap share. All in all, Tony Pollard has been fantasy relevant. The last 3 seasons, ranking as RB 21, 15, and 7. So as we approach 2025, with Tyjae Spears healthy, with Cam Ward under center, and hopefully an improved offense as a whole, we may be in situations in which we may see more touchdown upside for someone like Tony Pollard, who's clearing away the goal line back of this offense. Even though Spears could certainly impact Pollard's overall, potential for success, the volume of touches that he is guaranteed makes him a top 30 running back. I mean, if you're going to score 10 points per week this upcoming season, you're going to easily be in the top 24 conversation if you don't get injured. So as it currently stands, the discount that many of us are finding Tony Pollard at, I think is one that we should be taking advantage of, especially considering last season in games in which Tony Pollard found himself winning efforts, was averaging 18.37 fantasy points per game. Hopefully Cam Ward could lead some, potentially more wins for the Tennessee Titans this upcoming season. Moving on to our number 30, we have Tank Bigsby. I think Bigsby is probably the highest ranked player that I have in comparison to current ADP. His current ADP is like 130 or 150, somewhere within that range. But there's a lot of conversation regarding this backfield. No one knows who truly is going to be the number one. There's conversation in regards to Liam Cohen coming in, the new play caller, obviously the former offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was able to help elevate both Bucky Irving and, of course, Rashad White to being top 24 running backs last season. So the question is, can, this year's White/Irving be Etienne and Bigsby? Or is someone like the rookie running back Tootin going to come in and take all the opportunities from both these established running backs? Time will tell. As it currently stands in training camp, Tank Bigsby is getting the bulk majority of rushing opportunities. And I expect that to be something that continues because he has been highly efficient, especially this most recent season. Amongst all running backs, a 4.59 yard per carry average, 18th amongst all with 50 rushing attempts or more. 3.77 yards after contact per attempt, number 3 amongst all running backs last season. If we're going to be in far more positive or neutral game scripts because of Liam Cohen's influence on this offense, again, this most recent season was able to elevate the Buccaneers from being an offense that back in 2023 averaged 20.5 points per game as a team to 29.5 points per game as a team. Cohen is going to elevate this offense, is going to elevate the running game. Even though this offensive line isn't elite, neither is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the scheme itself is going to open up opportunity for someone like Tank Bigsby, who really just needs opportunity to find success. Last season, in games in which he had 14 or more touches, averaged 16.44 half PPR fantasy points per game. I'm anticipating him to be the clear and away RB1 of this team when it's all said and done. Number 31. We have Tyrone Tracy Jr. Look, last season as a rookie is a 5th round selection, number 26 overall at the running back position. Pretty good. Now, I currently have him at 31 because of the influence and the potential impact that Cam Scatterboo, the rookie running back that was drafted this offseason by the Giants, is going to play within the overall conversation. But as it currently stands, Tyrone Tracy still has value. I mean, last season from weeks 5 through 18, after Devin Singletary went down with injury and he truly took over this backfield, I mean, the guy was averaging 17.5 opportunities per game and nearly 12 fantasy points per game with 70% of the offensive snaps. I mean, in games in which he was given ample opportunity, 16 or more touches, was averaging 13.78 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format. He was decently efficient with 4.5 yards per carry. And even though Scatterboo is going to be in the conversation, I do anticipate Tyrone Tracy to be the primary receiving threat within this backfield, which again, he proved to have last season. And being associated with Russell Wilson typically means a lot of receiving upside, especially when you look at the last 2 teams that Russell Wilson has been associated with, the Denver Broncos and, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Both those offenses were in the top 10 conversation of running back targets within their given year. All right, moving on to number 32, we have Jaydon Blue, another one of these running backs that I am incredibly high on in comparison to their current ADP. I'm not drafting them at my number 32 running back, but I'm certainly drafting them at ADP whenever I get an opportunity to. Many of us made the mistake of worrying about Ezekiel Elliott being associated with Rico Dowdle last year. I'm not making that mistake this year. I am not going to be worried about Javonte Williams and what he presents in comparison to Jaydon Blue, the rookie running back, who has been spoken highly about by Brian Schottenheimer, the new head coach of this team, the former offensive coordinator, these most recent 2 seasons. I mean, the most recent 2 seasons, Tony Pollard ranked as RB15 and Rico Dowdle this most recent season, RB22. So why not Jaydon Blue maybe making a late season push to take over this backfield and supplanting Javonte Williams, who may have the inside track because of his veterancy. But even if we look at the rest of Brian Schottenheimer's career as a primary offensive play caller, from 2018 to 2022, he was the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks. In those 3 seasons, Chris Carson ranked as RB 15, 11, and 17. I'm anticipating a lot of success, especially considering we just saw Rico Dowdle in 2024 from weeks 3 through 18 average 19.23 opportunities per game and 12.28 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. I don't anticipate Javonte Williams, who post ACL has only averaged 3.61 yards per carry and 2.52 yards after contact per attempt, to compete with someone like Jaydon Blue, who in his final season at college had 61 targets and 42 receptions. Brian Schottenheimer yesterday quite literally compared Jaydon Blue to being a Darren Sproles-esque running back who's just bigger. If he's going to have a 3-down workload of opportunity, expect a lot of success from Jaydon Blue. Moving on to our number 33, Travis Etienne. Look, Travis Etienne associated with Tank Bigsby, both these running backs should be relevant. There should be a lot of value in this offense, considering, again, Liam Cohen left the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, giving their Buccaneers running backs all the opportunity in the world. They were number 4 amongst all teams in the National Football League. So if that opportunity share continues this upcoming season, I mean, we've seen Travis Etienne with ample opportunity be not only the number 3 running back in 2023, but the number 17 in 2022. This most recent season, number 36 overall, considering the injuries that took place. But I mean, prior to the injuries, averaging over 10 fantasy points per game, 15 opportunities per game. Within the role that he is going to be carved out, the Rachaad White role of sorts, he could very easily be a top 36 relevant running back. I don't anticipate him to get a lot of the early down carries, especially with Tank Bigsby and, of course, Tootin within the combination. But as it currently stands, with the receiving upside and the couple sprinkles that they're going to have him designed for, I still anticipate him to be relevant to a capacity. He's just not efficient enough to be a 3-down back anymore within this current offense as the Jaguars approach the 2025 season. But again, the Jaguars should be a much improved offense. So if they continue to score more touchdowns, maybe the receiving category could help Travis Etienne within that conversation. Moving on to our number 34 to close out the final tier of this episode, we have Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren, again, the last couple seasons has been relevant. He should be a top 36 ranked running back, especially considering there's no Najee Harris, and Kaleb Johnson, the rookie running back, is going to be taking care of early down work, but probably not a lot of the third down receiving work. So that presents a lot of opportunity for Jaylen Warren to be relevant. A guy that had himself 11.2 opportunities per game last season, and even though he wasn't efficient in terms of fantasy points per touch, ultimately was still dealing with a knee and hamstring injury for majority of last season. So if we're going to get him the opportunities that he deserves, last season in games in which he had 10 or more touches, was averaging 9.5 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. He was efficient, top 29 in terms of yard per carry, top 20 in terms of yards after contact per attempt amongst all running backs with 50 or more touches. Arthur Smith is going to get him involved, and there may be a potential in which Jaylen Warren gets an even bigger role than we're anticipating, which, for those of you who draft him, fingers crossed. Moving on to our number 35, Rachaad White. I talked about Rachaad White a little bit earlier in regards to the potential of his success, considering Bucky Irving's emergence. Look, the last 2 games of the 2024 season, regular season and postseason, Rachaad White had 3 touches and Bucky Irving had 40. I think the game plan going forward is probably not to throw all the touches in the direction of Bucky Irving and to try to keep him as relevant as possible for 17 consecutive games. But ultimately, Rachaad White is going to get himself enough of a workload to be relevant at a top 36 capacity. At least what I'm hoping. We all know that he could certainly be efficient when given opportunity. I mean, we go back to week 6 through 16 of last year. Throughout that 9-game span, he averaged 1 touchdown per game. And I mean, again, 14.48 fantasy points per game, a relevant receiving back. Even though Bucky Irving is a better rusher and receiver than Rachaad White, I still anticipate him to get himself a top 36 level of upside in terms of opportunity share. Number 36, we have Tyjae Spears. Look, Tyjae Spears with Tony Pollard. Again, this is going to be a 2-headed monster. Brian Callahan, the offensive play caller of this team, the head coach, has said that he wants to have a kind of rotation of sorts. Tony Pollard plus Tyjae Spears will lead to both of them being within the RB3 category. If one goes down, then the other is going to jump into the top 24 category. But as it currently stands, with them only getting, let's say, for example, 10 opportunities in the direction of Spears, his upside is going to be, 8 to 10 points. Which again, that's upside. The floor is more likely to be somewhere between like 7.5 to 8.5 points, which again, going into this upcoming season, if he's able to stay healthy for the entirety of the year, which unfortunately he wasn't able to last year, should be top 36. The final player I wanted to mention throughout this incredibly long video, yes, I know I've been talking for a while, is the honorable mention Quinshon Judkins. Going into this year, again, there's legal troubles. As this offseason progresses and we get more information regarding his legal battle, his training camp relevancy and or potential, whether or not he's even going to be signed to the team. These are all to be determined. But as it currently stands, if in fact he's not available for week 1, Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson, there's a lot of potential going in those directions. But if in fact we can get him in the right direction of potentially being signed and ready to go, this could be an offense that looks in his direction as as a player that could have a 3-down role. And a 3-down role in any capacity in fantasy football is someone that is absolutely a top 30 running back, if not top 25, which again depends on how successful this kind of an offense can be. Again, the Cleveland Browns anticipated to have the lowest win total this upcoming season, but we're going to have to wait and see. But that's my honorable mention. Those are my top 36, 37 running back rankings for the 2025 fantasy football season for our upcoming drafts. Thank you everybody for watching. Again, like I mentioned before, if you guys haven't yet already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're making daily content. Tomorrow we'll be back with tight end tier list at potentially a top 24 capacity, talking about a bunch of tight ends that hopefully can help us capture some championships this season. Again, be sure to check out the Patreon. Be sure to check out Betr as they continue to partner with us for the remainder of the season. Again, for those of you guys who want rankings every single Sunday morning throughout the regular season, updated half PPR, full PPR, all-encompassing rankings, including flex, more information down in the description. But of course, you'll get draft rankings every single Sunday, updated weekly for the entirety of this month to get you prepared for your upcoming drafts. Thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.